Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person communicates, interacts with others, and processes the world around them. Someone who is autistic may find it challenging to connect socially, express themselves, or handle certain sensory experiences like loud sounds or bright lights. Others may have remarkable strengths, such as deep focus, creativity, or problem-solving abilities. And that is why autism is called a spectrum, because it looks different for each person. Some need extra support, while others may be quite independent. For mothers raising an autistic child, they often begin with an instinct, like something feels different about their child's development. However, the road to diagnosis is often met with skepticism, misinformation, and emotional hurdles. Today on our podcast, we will be hearing directly from a mom who has been on this journey and willing to share experience with the hope that she can raise awareness and advocate for a faster intervention to support children on the autism spectrum. Today's podcast should keep you glued to your seats, so don't go away. Stay tuned. What does this mean for my child? What does their future look like? What would you say to that mom who is either in the middle of this, just finding out, and everything is like, oh my God, is this over for this child? What would you say to that mom?
Okay, so I think it's a natural fear for any caregiver, whether it's your child or a sibling or an elderly parent, and maybe you yourself is facing challenges. And the idea or the thought comes into your mind, what will happen to my loved one should anything happen to me? And that is a natural fear that I think anybody who's in the position of caregiving has, because almost every moment of your waking life, you're thinking and planning for this other person. And then it dawns on you that you are fallible and you're only human. So the idea that, like, what will happen to them if, for God forbid, anything happens to you, this might not be anyone else for your loved one. And I think for me, I did face that fear at some stage, but I think at this time I'm sort of at peace because number one, I think early on I just realized that, even though I can claim possession of my child, he ultimately is not mine. He belongs to God and is God's child. And if God loved him enough to bring him into my family where I and my husband can care as much as we do for him, then should anything happen to us, God will also love him enough to meet his needs when we're not around. So I think that's my first strategy of dealing with the peace I have, knowing that I have a special needs child, and he will obviously outlive me because, if everything goes the way it should. And then the other thing that helps me is knowing that I have enough partners alongside me who know him and understand him and who are actively helping me to get him to a place where he can contribute meaningfully back into our community. And so once he's able to do that, then I think he will have a place and a space to exist. And there will be people around him to help support him. And I mean, I could be just living in a dream world, and this could all be my imagination. And if that's my argument as well, then I go back to, at the end of the day, he's not mine. He does belong to someone greater than I am. And even my best doesn't compete with God's best. So I think for me, that's my hope and my faith that, I can try my best, but it still won't be as the best God can do for my son. And so I think the strategies I use, again, go back to community, educating those around us, making sure everyone knows him and how to deal with him, and that I also teach him who God is. So that he's never in a position to expect things from other people, but to trust fully in what God can do for him.
Amazing. I see that you're a woman of faith. Just very quickly, I wanted to just bring up this scripture. And interestingly, you talk about your understanding that is been given to you by God. And if God has put him in your life for a reason, then God will see it to the end, right? He will see it to a fruitful conclusion. And that's interesting, and there's this scripture I would like to share, which is from 1 Corinthians 10:13. And it's just paraphrasing that God will never give us more than we can handle, just to keep it short and simple. And I think sometimes in our lives, we just feel like this is too much. But interestingly, I like the way, I would say, Terry Bowles is from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I'm reading an excerpt from what he's saying. He says, if I take Paul's words and God's faithfulness seriously, based on the scripture, I must also look beyond my self-centeredness to the pain and severe testing that others endure. And he says, if he looks at the world generally, he sees people around with also dire needs like war and terror and what have you. And he's saying, could it be that God could use me to provide a way out for the hopeless? Could I help others and do life? So it's an interesting way to look at it, because sometimes it's almost about ourselves and why did you do this, God? Why did you allow this to happen to me? And we're not looking at it from a providence perspective to say maybe God knows that there's a potential in you, or that there's something you would do with this, not just for your situation, but to help others. And this might just be something that would bloom for the good of just maybe autistic people in your community. Maybe he's seen you using the opportunities you have to, you're advocating right now to talk about it. And maybe it's just, we don't know how God works, right? But in his providence, we trust that it's going to end out for our good. So it's a good way to kind of reflect upon this and think we should stop the blaming game. If we've been saddled with whatever it is, and God knows why, then back to what we said earlier on, are we asking the right questions? Are we surrounding ourselves with a community of people that can help us along the way? You talked about the support framework, people that are helping you as well. And we can't really plan everything out in life. Even our lives is not a guarantee. It's not 100% certain. We just do what we can, and we trust God, for us that are believers, that He's in control. And whatever happens, happens. But we're going to take it a step at a time. So thank you so much for sharing your faith. Thank you for giving us a perspective of how that faith works. It's not just when things are smooth and things are merry and joyful, but that faith is holding you strong even when you don't know what tomorrow holds, even when it seems the currents are bashing and everything seems rough. You know that He will give you the strength, and He will give you the support, and He gives the wisdom to navigate the ordeal, and hopefully it's going to turn out for good. And I think that the women in our call or our podcast need to hear that, and also lean into the faith community, get people to support them like you've been supported. And it's just a beautiful way you've put it, because it helps me see God in a different light, right? That even in the difficulties, He provides. You said something earlier on when we started. You said He put people around you. You said one way or the other, you found people in similar situations, people that were understanding, people that had listening here, people that wanted to help. And if we remove that from the old equation, it's going to be really awful, but like cushioning you at every point of the time. So thank you so much for sharing that. I am motivated. I am encouraged by what you've just shared. And I believe that our women on the call hopefully can lean into that and draw strength from their faith and just the community to continue to help them along the journey. And just my perspective, I'm happy for you to chip in, because we look at it from the future. What if somebody's not there? What if I'm not there? That's what you just spoke to. But what about the child's future? Like, is he going to grow up to be independent? Is he going to grow up to be able to take care of himself? Like, what's this going to look like? I don't know if you can really speak to that, or has that ever crossed your mind? And how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so I think it obviously comes back to understanding your child and where they're at, and also how much you're willing to invest and pour into your child so that they are independent enough. I think this question is dependent on your specific situation, and a kid, regardless of what condition they might have, has the potential to do and be anything. And so it's ourselves as parents that limit our children to whatever degree, because we think that they should not amount or cannot amount to anything. And I think early on, when I realized, someone told me that whether you intervene or never intervene in your child's life with autism, they will always be learning something. So nothing is ever hopeless, because if you don't do anything for them, they'll still be learning, and they will be better tomorrow than they were the day before. Even if it's the most minute learning experience, they will learn something every single day. And applying the interventions and my efforts to make that happen at an exponential rate is what has gotten us to where we are today. Would he ever be independent in the future and like live his own life, have a job, have a family, or whatever the case is? I don't know that at this stage, but I can either preempt that he's going to be completely dependent on me or a sibling or a relative at some stage, or I can put all my efforts into preparing him to be able to reach those goals. And so again, it comes down to knowing your child or whoever you're taking care of, knowing what they like, what have they learned and what have they accomplished in the time that you've known them or had them in your care. And then saying, okay, this is what they can do now. Is it possible for me to dream this for their future? Or even ask God, God, what do you think my child or this child can achieve in the future? And He will show you and He will direct you. And then it's not just about saying, okay, he's God's child and God will do everything for him. No, it's partnering with God and saying, what do I have in my pocket of resources that can help me get this child there to that end goal? And then trying your hardest and your level best to get them to that place. And so I don't think that we are without hope. I think that every individual human being has the potential to do anything that they can and want to do. And again, it just comes down to how do we nurture each other to be able to accomplish those things. And it's so interesting, in the space of inclusion and education, people will identify those with gifts and abilities and pour all the resources into that one individual to help them get wherever they want to go. And then there's those kids who have less, who are disadvantaged, those same resources to get them where they want to go. And so I just think it's a reframing of our perception and our ideology. We just give every kid the opportunities that they deserve. And so I think, yes, we do limit ourselves because we also think that we can't do it for our kids. But we don't realize how much is available to us and what we can use, the little that we have. So there'll be a caller out there listening to us speaking and say, oh, she's a doctor she's educated, she's got all these amazing professionals at her disposal, or whatever the case is. But you'll be surprised to know that even I felt hopeless at some points. And I felt that I didn't know anything. And I felt that, who do I speak to about this thing? Do I tell people? Or how do I find the right professionals to come alongside me and help me? And even that is a journey. It's like so hard to find the right people who are congruent with you and your child's lifestyle and what you want to achieve, because even the professionals will limit you and your kid, and even the professionals have different understanding of things. And so a lot of burden comes on parents to be the project manager, if I can put it, of their child. And so if I can encourage people to get as much information as they can, to know what they want and what they want their child to achieve, you can do anything that you put your mind to, but you cannot be lazy, and you have to try. You have to try, you have to be diligent, you have to be hardworking. And so I come back into the point where my child has developed my character so much into becoming a person of Christ, because the things that I've had to change about myself and my lifestyle, my thinking, just to take care of him, have grown me more and more into the person of Christ, which I would not probably not have been able to do if he was not my child. And so I think it's always just like thinking about things in a different way, not always focusing on me. Why has this happened to me? And I think when we chatted previously, I shared that when I was going through my journey of acceptance, my husband and I found ourselves in such a dark place. Like, I just remember the world just looked gray to me. And it's something I can't explain unless you've been through it. And one would say, but like, how does the world look like gray? Like, literally everything was dull and gray. And my husband and I were just like down in the dumps, and we were blaming each other, blaming ourselves, wondering why us? What did we do to deserve this? We thought we were the best people, and we had done so much for God, and our God is punishing us. And it was a lot to deal with. And I think I made the decision then to like have a submersion baptism, because I had been baptized previously as a baby. And I'd, just finally taken the step to decide, okay, I'm gonna do a proper baptism. And I was wondering if my husband would want to do it with me. And I didn't think that he was ready for that, and it wasn't something we had discussed together. And so one day I came home from work. I had been reading my Bible, and he said, are you done with that? And I noticed that he'd stopped reading his Bible for a while. And I think when he saw me doing it, he was like, okay, maybe I can get some wisdom from this book today. I'm having a bad day. So he took the Bible, and then he said, so I asked him, well, what are you reading? He said, I'm going to read Proverbs because they say that's the book of wisdom and I need some now. So in my mind, I was thinking like this, I highly doubt there's anything for us in Proverbs. Yes, it is the book of wisdom. Yes, it's a book that teaches us many lessons, but like, what are you going to get out of there? Anyway, I just kept that to myself, and I left him. And then after he read, I said, okay, so what did you learn? And then he told me something about finance and money. And I was like, this is not what we need right now. Okay. So then I was like, do you mind if I borrow the Bible again, just quickly? And then I was just like, I said a little prayer in my heart, and I was like, God, we need something right now just to come from you. And like, I was doing it for my husband, but I was also doing it because I wanted to have an opener to ask him if he'd like to get baptized with me. And then God just opened up to, I'm saying God, but my fingers just opened up to John 9. And then so I just looked down, and like, I was still doubtful that I was going to get anything for us, because I've done this before and it never works. It was like irrelevant or like confusing. And so as I started reading, it was about when Jesus heals the blind man and his disciples are saying, oh, so like whose fault is this Jesus? Is it that his parents sinned? Did he sin? Like what burden is he carrying that he should be blind? And you know, because that's the framework we come from, is that we want to blame something or someone for our situation. And so as you read on in that story, Jesus says, it's not anyone's fault. Nobody did anything wrong. God has allowed this to happen so that he can get glory out of the situation. And so Jesus goes on to heal the blind man and he sees, and God is given glory. And so in that moment, I was like literally color came back into my life. It was just like an instant of revelation. And I was like, where did the color go? And so my husband asked me in back, like, so what did you read? So I told him, and I was like, what I've just realized is that we've been blaming ourselves so much lately, and yet it doesn't even matter. Like whether we have an answer or not, whether we're going to go do a genetic test to find the cause, whatever the case is, our son is who he is. He's not going to change for anybody, whether we have an answer to these questions or not. But God has allowed this to happen to give him glory. And so even my husband was just like, he went to bed so at peace, even though it had such a rough day. And it allowed me then to say, listen, I've made this decision. Would you like to do it with me? And he agreed. And we got baptized together that weekend. And so I think from this, what I've learned is that, we can focus on ourselves. We can focus on the whys and the whats, but we don't focus on the who. And the who is God, and the who is us in how God has made us to be. And the how do we move forward from this? And God is so amazing and so generous, and he will come alongside us and partner with us when we ask him to. So we just need to focus on the right things if we want to see change and to help each other, because my son helps me, I help my son. We are not perfect, we are not in the best place, we haven't reached our goal yet, but we have hope and we are working towards something, and we can only trust that God can take our efforts and make them more than what we can make them.
Thank you so much. You've said quite a lot, and I'm truly very inspired. We are the project managers of our children. So I hope that moms listening in, this is all on you, not in a way that it burdens you, but in a way that you can really partner with God and get a support system around you. And because you know your child like no one, you're able to leverage the resources that would work for him, because there's so much out there and not everything is going to work for him, but you know him. So you know her, or you know whoever it is under your care, and you're able to explore and then decide what works best for them. So that's what project management means, and being able to work alongside whoever is there that has been provided to support you, and making sure that it's a fit for purpose remedy or resource or what have you, so that your child benefits from that. And I like another thing you said, we need to change the way we're thinking. So it's more like a paradigm shift, thinking outside the box and looking at, okay, now I'm with this situation, what can I do? What can work for me? And I really like the way that you've, positioned it. And thank you for sharing your story. And I know there are moms, maybe even dads on the call. And sometimes these things, create a level of conflict. And you're just being real. These things happen. But it's not us against each other. It's us working together to be able to confront what issues there are. And if we're on the winning team, then we definitely would find ways or explore solutions or possibilities that could support our children through this process. So it's really food for thought. I think the words of wisdom that you've shared, the nuggets of advice that we really hold there, we can adapt in our different situations. And maybe there are people out there thinking, like you said, I don't have the education, I don't have the resources, I don't have the facilities, but there's something you will have, and maybe explore that and see how that can work for you. So it's really very helpful what you've shared. Thank you so much. I think I'll move on to the other question, and I think you alluded to this earlier when you started off in terms of you now navigating the school environment, and obviously trying to find a school that would support your child was like a nightmare, because maybe the schools were not even, the schools are not even designed for that type of, for special needs kids or what have you. Most schools are not. And I'm thinking maybe from your experience, if you could maybe give us a nugget of advice, like how do we support our kids, especially autism, on the autism spectrum? How do we, as parents or as moms, we're struggling with the school providing the necessary facilities, they don't know what to do, and maybe they're just turning us away and saying, you need to take your child. What would you advise moms, women on the call to do?
Okay, so I think it is obviously dependent where in the world you are, what facilities and resources you have available to you. But ultimately, as a parent, it's our responsibility to decide what we want to use and don't want to use, and also what we want to create for our children. Because even if a school says they're inclusive and offer amazing facilities, we're not there every day to witness how teachers are prepared to deal with our kids, and we're not there to see if our children even have access to those amazing facilities. And so I've heard horror stories of kids really struggling, even in special needs schools, even in inclusive schools, because we're not there ourselves. And so ultimately, it is our burden and our responsibility to research the places we send our children to know the people who are engaging with our children, and to be actively involved so that we can protect our children. As you know, that the kids don't end up going to school in the first place. And then they end up getting locked in bedrooms because parents don't know what to do with them. We are so resource limited, is creating our own communities for our children. We need to move away from the institutionalization model, because I think we've grown to be quite lazy because that's what our parents did. So this wasn't modeled to us. So now we need to create our own concepts of how we're going to educate our children. And so I can only use my life as a case study because it's not a cut and paste for everyone. And the things that I have available to me are not things that you might have available to you, but it's something maybe that you can think along and maybe think about in your situation what you can do. And so apart from what is available resource-wise in your space, how we educate our kids is also dependent on our children and where they are at and what they need as well. Because some kids just can't function in a classroom environment, and having loads of people around them distresses them. And so they might need to be homeschooled or have alternative forms of education for them. And so it's so many things we need to factor in. It also matters what level they are at developmentally, because they might be going through a phase where they need social interaction and they need to be in a school, or they're going through a phase where it's just too overwhelming and their needs are so great that they can't be in that setting. And so if I can just segue here to say that, again, there's no cut and paste for every child on the spectrum. And so you have to try everything until you find something that works for your child. Loads of research has gone into programs and strategies and whatever the case is, and you can research them and they can work for a time, but sometimes it doesn't work. And so it's can also be a mashup of different strategies at the same time. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort. We have to be committed to the process. We have to try as much as we can until we find something that works. And I mean, I can sit here and say this because I have been through the process and it was long and it was hard. But I also appreciate that not every family can have one parent at home. And I also appreciate that not every parent has the resources to access information and access facilities and access things, you know. I mean, in Africa itself, we got such a huge digital divide, and most of my learning has happened online and researching different things. And, you know, I appreciate that this is not possible. But what is possible is dependent on you and your motivation to be able to do something, and also your community and what is available to you. So I've been having this discussion with my mother because we both think she's on the spectrum. And just because we compare different notes and we talk about different things and her lived experience, my mother's family have really like treated her like an egg, if I can put it that way, in the sense that I watch how they interact with her. And previously, I used to be quite resentful for it because I used to be jealous that at this late stage in her life, she's got people elder to her treating her like a princess. And then I came to the realization that even though she was not diagnosed or she didn't have a label, her community knew something was different. And from a young age, they always stepped in to fill the gap for her. They always stepped in to, you know, nurture her and see when she's in distress and come alongside her and be there for, be present for her. And my mother's got such a close relationship with all of her aunts because they do this for her. And I haven't seen them do this for anyone else in her family. And, you know, like I said, initially, I was like, why, this is so unfair. But now that I've been processing, you know, being with her again after being abroad for a while and realizing that she is different, I realized that, you know, it doesn't matter whether we have a label or not, whether your child has autism or not, and you have a diagnosis or not. The point is, your child will be your child. And you have to make the intentional effort to want to step in and fill the gap and treat them like the princess or the prince that they are. And so, and the reason I came to this realization was because on the weekend I went to visit my grandfather, because my gran is late, recently late, and we wanted to spend time together. And he, out of my whole family, understands my son the most. And not because he says my son has autism or acknowledges the label at all, but rather watches his behavior, sees how he responds to things, see how he interacts with the environment, and has made an assessment and a call on how everyone in our family should treat him. And so my son went to church with my grandfather, and on the way back, he's like, "Oh, I want pizza. Can we get pizza?" And so, because we'd already prepared dinner, my grandfather said, "No, not today, but maybe tomorrow I can get some for you." And so they made an agreement, and they're gonna. Now, if anyone else had asked for that pizza, it would have been, "No, we don't have money." But because he knows my son is different and he wants to have a special bond with my son and connects with him on that level, he is prepared to make that sacrifice for my son. And so, like, I could have sat back and been like, this is so unfair. My grandfather would never have done a blah, 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 blah. I mean, my grandfather's amazing. He spoiled me my whole life. But my point is, he sees who needs what and is able to come and fill the gap for that need. And so this is how communities are supposed to work. Communities are supposed to see what each person needs and be able to come and provide for each of those different needs. And I think it comes back to the conversation of equality. I think in South Africa, we spend so much time speaking on equality because of our apartheid past, and everything must be equal, equal, equal. But that is actually more disadvantaging those who actually need more and privileging those who already have too much. So it's what we need to do is this person has this challenge. Let me come and help them with that challenge. But they also have this gifting. And so it brings into the equation or the conversation the issue of equity. Let us just help each other with what we need rather than giving inappropriate interventions and inappropriate assistance so that we can just all be able to contribute effectively.
Well said. So thank you so much. So again, on the topic of schooling and for moms or caregivers on our podcast wondering, okay, my child is on the autism spectrum. There doesn't seem to be a space for him there. And you again encouraging us to think outside the box. What works for your child? If it's not schooling, then homeschool. Look for ways that your child can learn. And I like the example you've given about community, about family, and then being able to recognize a need in the home, you know, with regards to a child or a sibling, and just being there for them. And I like the comparison of, you know, you've talked about equality and equity. Equality, everybody gets the same thing. But when it comes to equity, you get what you need, not the same thing, because the same thing would definitely not work for a child on an autism spectrum. So it's just so, I would say, words of wisdom. And I hope that our women, they've been able to pick a thing or two that they can learn for themselves or pass on to their community as well. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. Last year has been very empowering. It's been very educational. It's been very inspiring. I've learned a lot, you know, from what you've shared, from just the insights you provided. And I want to say a huge thank you for just being the person you are, and, you know, your continuous, I would say, part to advocating for children on the autism spectrum is admirable. Thank you for your courage. You go through day to day, living with an autistic child, and yet you still find time to share the message and just empower women, empower communities out there to just be a little bit more gracious, be a little bit more patient, and take time to be caring and to provide the opportunities that, you know, children on the autism spectrum need. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, dear listeners, as we wrap up this conversation, remember every mom's journey, you know, with a child that is on the autism spectrum is unique. No one has to walk alone. I think Aloysia said that over and over and over again. You don't have to work alone. You don't have to do this solo. So I would just encourage our mothers, you know, or caregivers. We are the advocates. We are the warriors. We are the champions. You are the champions for the children you love. The journey of discovering autism is not always easy, but within every challenge lies an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to fight for the support that our children deserve. Your voice matters. Your instincts are powerful as women. Do not ignore it. You need to lean in and push through, seek understanding, check resources, stand strong in the face of doubt, because you're the ones that would pave a world that embraces neurodiversity with compassion and acceptance. Remember, autism is not a disease. It is not a roadblock. It's a different path, one that is filled with unique strengths, perspectives, and possibilities. And with love, with awareness, and with action, every child can flourish. So please keep learning, like Aloysia said, keep speaking, and most of all, keep believing in the incredible potential of your child. You're not alone, and together, I believe That's what we're doing with this podcast. We can create a world that sees, that hears, and uplifts every voice. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us on our conversation today. I hope it's been extremely helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your family and friends, and keep encouraging them to do the same. Keep listening to the Help We Need podcast. Stay tuned in for more episodes on living your best lives. And until next time, stay empowered and remember to empower him.